Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bohr Foundation, and we are very sorry for the delay. We just had some technical issue with Meg from the United States, so sorry again. And I think we are very ready to start now. So good evening, everyone, to this conference in connection with the exhibition The Secrets of Color. I am very pleased to introduce tonight's lecture of Meg Wang, also known as Wang Chu-ping, which is currently assistant professor at the Mississippi State University Libraries and research associate with the Mississippi State University's Cobb Institute of Archaeology. Her specialties are cataloging, collection management, conservation, and scientific analysis of artifacts. She was trained and previously worked at various cultural heritage institutions in 3 different continents, including the British Museum, and the Museum of London in the UK, the National Palace Museum in Taipei, Taiwan, and the CDRMF at the Louvre in France. Dr. Wang Si-Meg formerly was an associate researcher in the Department of Conservation of the National Palace Museum in Taipei, and author of many seminal articles on Chinese painted enamel on porcelain. Last year, we were very lucky, so we had the chance to collaborate with Meg, who guided us from the United States in the analysis of a set of enameled porcelain from the Alfred Bohr collection. And you could find the result of this analysis in the last bulletin of the foundation that was published last year. So tonight, she will present the following lecture, Imperial Porcelain with Painted Enamels during the Qing Kangxi era and Yongzheng era. So Meg, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just want to email, I got my copy as well. And good evening, thank you for waiting. And today we will look at Imperial porcelain with painted enamel during Qing Kangxi period and the Yongzheng period. And next slide, please. Can I have next slide? Yes. So during Emperor Kangxi period, to give you some background context, is about the same time when King Louis XIV ruling France in Europe, and portraits of these 2 great leaders here, you can see it is quite easy to tell the cultural difference by just looking at the decorative style in their costume. And next slide, please. In that time, there were a lot of missionary activities going on between East and West, and the trading going on as well. So for those missionaries coming to China, small enamel items are quite easy to carry, and they are actually one of the favorite missionary gifts in the Qing court. And today we can still see many of them remained in very good shape, kept in the museum, as you can see in the picture. On the right-hand side, you can see a set of 9 enamel boxes placed nicely in a wooden storage container. This wooden container actually was made after this enamel box received in the court, showing how the Chinese emperors value this box. And comparing the item on the left-hand side is much traditional Chinese metal enamels, where you can image this kind of exotic style caught Chinese emperors' attention, and they will ask imperial artisans in the workshop to reproduce or to incorporate such foreign motif or pattern or style they like. And a lot of this kind of communication, the dialogue between emperor and his officers. Next slide, please. About what to make and what not to make is very well documented in the archive of the Qing Imperial Workshop, often known as 国际档. On the screen, you can see on the left-hand side, I try to explain a little bit what is the content. On the left-hand side is a note saying some of the artisan was being lazy, and the emperor was asking particular person in charge to do the daily routine and observation about their progress. And on the right-hand side note is mentioned the emperor was not satisfied with the result and saying the style is a little bit too cheeky, too tacky, and they were asking to change the motive. So this is very detailed communication between what to make and what not to make. So next slide, please. And here are some examples of porcelain with painted enamel from Kangxi period. And these are porcelain made in baking in the Imperial Workshop. And from here, you can see this is kind of typical style, decorative style of Kangxi period porcelain with painted enamel. It's flowers on the colorful ground. And also you can notice the mark on the bottom. Usually it's overglazed, either red mark or blue mark in 4 words, 康熙御制. Next slide, please. So after Kangxi period, move on to the Yongzheng period, you can see a different type of style making this enamel porcelain. In the Yongzheng period, you can see the style is usually have 4 elements: poetry, calligraphy, seals, and the painting. So it's very different from, Kangxi, his father's style. And it feels like Emperor Yongzheng is really turning the white porcelain or using white porcelain as a white canvas to making this painted enamel porcelain. So next slide, please. So before we go on any further, I would like to explain a little bit about the term or terminology I use here and how I put this porcelain with painted enamels in different groups. And basically, this group are not by style, but by place of manufacturers. I hope you can see the screen clear. These terms may not be the same or similar you see from the other publication or other exhibitions or other conference talk. So please be aware of that. So let's look at this chart. Today we are focused on the pink group. This pink group is is under the category of imperial porcelain, which is very different from the trade porcelain. In Europe, it's quite common to see trade porcelain in the market or in the museum, and they are made in Jingdezhen commercial kilns, and often they were called fermier vete or fermier hose. But today we are looking at the imperial porcelain, and sometimes people get confused. There are different subgroups under the imperial porcelain. Partially, there are much less numbers of porcelain coming from imperial workshop can be seen today. A large number of these pieces are kept in the National Palace Museum in Taipei or the Peking Museum in China. So today we are trying to explain the difference between porcelain made in Peking Imperial Workshop and porcelain made in Jingdezhen Imperial Kiln, based on the archival materials and some of the scientific analysis we did in the past and last year with the blog curator Pauline. So, and what we call those porcelain made in Peking Imperial Workshop, we call it Falang Cai, and it usually comes with the overglaze mark on the bottom. And for those porcelain made in Jingdezhen Imperial Kiln, we usually call it Yangcai. Yangcai, they most of the time they have the underglaze blue mark, which by seeing that you probably can tell a little bit difference. Okay, and next slide, please. So these are the actual items we can see. On the left-hand side are Falang Cai porcelain, which is made in Peking Imperial Workshop, and on the right-hand side is Yangcai, made in Jingdezhen Imperial Kiln. So if you look at the bottom mark carefully, you probably can tell one is overglazed, the other one is underglazed blue, and also you can see the colors, saturation, and density of the color are slightly different. And these are Kangxi period porcelain. And next slide, we will see some example of Yongzheng period compared to Kangxi period Falang Cai. On the bottom three are the Yangcai made from Jingdezhen Imperial Kiln, and on the top are the Falang Cai made in Imperial Workshop. So you can see they are kind of following the same style motif pattern, and so it's like the Emperor Yongzheng is trying to copy what he thinks is good from the Kangxi period porcelain. And next slide. So as I just mentioned, how do we tell the difference? They kind of look similar, but they are different in a way, well, in many ways, if you look at it very carefully. So partially we use, fortunately, there were a lot of archival material left for us to explore more detail into this the background or the context when they were made in the past. So like Huojingdang, I just show you, and a lot of palace memorials, the conversation between the local officers and the emperors, and also from the missionary letters. And the other way trying to tell the difference is what the main focus I'm going to present today is the scientific study, the result of them from like a microscopic examination and X-ray fluorescence analysis to tell chemically composition and the ingredient they use are different. Next slide, please. So let's start with the Falang Cai porcelain made in Peking Imperial Workshop. The most characteristic enamel color in this group are rose pink enamel. And actually, the pink enamel appear in Europe. Tribute objects or missionary gifts were so eye-catching that Emperor Kangxi wanted the same to be made by his own imperial workshop. Especially the idea of using gold as current made it more appealing to the emperor, because gold is a symbol of wealth and authority. And actually, turning gold into ruby red glass is kind of ancient nanotechnology. From Europe, we can see here. Next slide. So these are the typical example of gold ruby glass object made by using European recipe called purple of Cassius. And it was rediscovered by a German chemist around 1670. And next slide, please. And this European recipe is involving dissolved gold into a very strong acid liquid to produce a chloride gold solution in the presence of tin hydroxide and result a powder gold, which is deposited from the solution. And then the gold ruby glass is reproduced by adding this gold powder into a transparent base glass matrix. And this recipe revealed the red color by having colloidal gold nanoparticle in its glass matrix. And this is some kind of technique was unknown in the contemporary China. Next slide, please. So actually this using gold, tiny gold particle to reveal different color was way before 17th century was known, but there was sometimes the technique was lost. That's why the previous slide we mentioned a German chemist rediscovered how to make it. And the actual evidence of this ancient nanotechnology you can see from much earlier stained glass window. In the old time, they already know how to use gold particle to make red glass or silver particle into the glass matrix to make yellow glass. Next slide, please. So back to China, in the contemporary China, there were only two ways of producing red glass, either using copper oxide as current and fire in a high temperature kiln, or using iron oxide as current to fire in a low temperature kiln. Next slide, please. So these are a group of pale red enamel objects as a result of this experimental stage of painting enamel porcelain during the Kangxi period. And the background of this experiment we can consider as a combination of domestic color and the foreign color. Next slide, please. So this chart showing how the Chinese Imperial workshop trying to create or make their own rose pink enamel. Either they do outsourcing to find the foreign colors from like imported foreign enamel pigments, or they try to find a foreigner who come to China and they have the skill to make pink enamels, or they do it in-housing way, trying to make domestic color by enlist. At that time, the candle in the south part of China, there are people who are skilled at making enamels, especially metal enamels, and so the imperial court and also the local government was trying to send in all these Cantonese enamelers to serve in court in the imperial workshop, trying to help to try how to create rose pink enamel. And so they have to either find or create their own recipe. Why Canton? Because next slide. Canton was one of the port open to the foreigner. You can see from here, this is rather late time, but it's around 1780 in Channel period. But you can see there are a lot of cargo ships from different countries. And back to 1684, sometime in the middle period of Kangxi, there were 4 ports open to the foreigner. And to the late 17th century, start to have foreigners can come to the mainland and to have the building and to run a business. And to the 18th centuries, like 1757, Emperor Channel only keep Canton as the only one port to do the international trade. So Canton was specially kind of geological location to get contact with Westerner and with all these foreign cargo ships. And they also have the local craftsmen to see all these foreign goods and trying to invent their own way or imitate this foreign enamel ware. And the next slide, please. As I mentioned, other than Huojidang, there are a lot other archival materials such as palace memorial from the governor of Canton, Yongzheng, to the Emperor Kangxi. This is the document dated in 1716. The governor was saying he is sending some foreigners and also one of them, as well as one of the Cantonese enamelers, to the Imperial workshop to help with, the task about making painting enamels in porcelain. And next slide, please. So for the following several years, the governor of Canton kept recruiting enamelers from the south, either from the local workshop or the missionary fresh off the boat at Port of Canton. Next slide, please. So at the same time, what the emperor did back in the court is, having probably heard about these European recipes, the Emperor Kangxi actually turned to those Western missionaries already served in the Qing court. Two persons standing out. One is Matteo, the other one is Giuseppe, and they were chosen for good reason. Let's see what they are capable to do at that time, and that's why they were chosen by the emperor to try. Next slide, please. So, Nang Shilin, Giuseppe, he is known as Nang Shilin in Chinese, and he's one of the missionaries served quite a long time in the Qing courts, from the Emperor Kangxi to Emperor Yongzheng and to the Emperor Qianlong. And he was a very fine artist who successfully blended European painting styles with Chinese traditional painting. Next slide, we can see this is the earliest known painting by Giuseppe, and was done probably 8 years after his arrival in China. And for this is a very typical composition of Chinese painting. You can see the main thing in the middle, and probably some calligraphy on the side, on the corner, and there are several seals. I don't know whether this kind of remind you what you just see earlier about the porcelain with painted enamel during Yongzheng period. I will try to put them together in the following slide so you can see how Emperor Yongzheng was trying to using white porcelain as white canvas to create painting enamel on porcelain. So for what Giuseppe are good at, the Emperor Kangxi apparently thought he would be competent for the task of painting enamel. That's why he was chosen. And next slide, we can see Matteo. Matteo is known as Ma Guoxian in Chinese, and he is very good at copper plate etching and printmaking. Next slide, please. One of his major work is called View of Dehe, the seat of the summer palace of the emperors, printed in 1713. And There are 36 views in total, and they were all used. They all were made by copper plate etching. Next slide, please. Another example of Mathieu's work is these overview maps of imperial territory, often called the Jesus Atlas of China, printed in 1719. This was the first map with longitude and latitude in China. So both prints was using copper plate etching. Next slide, please. Also, in another letter that Matteo sent to Rome, mentioned he needs some particular pigment, like a lead white or rose pigment, and also he need a book, a handbook about painting and making enamel colors. So, in my personal view, Matteo know how to do the copper plate etching, so he's good at using acid, liquid, or solutions stuff, and also he knows how to use pigment very well, and also he has some. He have received some pigment from Europe, and he also has a handbook. So, in my opinion, it is entirely possible that Matteo would have developed the rose pink enamel for the Emperor Kangxi if he wanted to. So, did he? Let's see next slide. So, again, from the historic documents, in one of the letters sent back to Europe, we can see their attitude. Matteo and Giuseppe's attitude about making painting enamels. They mentioned in March 1716, they were requested by the Kangxi Emperor to paint in enamel. However, they don't like the job. They dislike the job so much. So what they did, they tried to either to avoid it or to produce very bad work in order to be excused from doing it again. So they don't want to do it. Next slide, please. So apart from trying to ask Western missionary in the court to run the experiment, also we can see continuing from the Palace Memorial from Governor of Canton sending more people to the court to help with this experiment. And this one is dated in September 9, 1718. I think in the screen you can see the orange-red handwriting actually is the comment, is a response from the emperor saying. But around that time, 1780, actually, the Imperial workshop already successfully produced all kind, various color enamels. But since the governor, sending more enamel coming, we will see how their skill and what they can do when they arrive. Next slide, please. And next year in 1719, the governor keeps sending people, and this time he finally finds a foreign missionary who know how to make enamels. His name is Chen Zhongxing here. Next slide, please. I can't quite pronounce his name in French or English, Shang. Anyway, he is known as Chen Zhongxing in Chinese. He arrived at the court in 1719. Actually, when he arrived, he did notice in the Imperial workshop they are already doing or making painting enamel for a couple of years. And that's why he mentioned in one of the documents and the later saying he is not familiar with the Chinese-made color enamel and he would prefer to use European color enamel. It's kind kind of suggesting he might have a better understanding the fusing temperature of the powder enamels, which this is kind of new to the Chinese techniques, or So another missionary called Feng Bingzhen, he wrote back to France on Chen Zhongxing's behalf to request more European color to be sent to China. So next slide, please. So to this point, I kind of mentioning all different way how the Imperial workshop trying to produce or trying to make the rose pink enamel, trying to outsourcing from imported foreign colors, or find foreigner who know how to do it, or trying to do it in-housing, sending Cantonese enamelers to the court and create their own recipe. And next step, next slide. We want to take a closer look at this actual object. These are the products, these are the result of this experiment. This nice pale red enamel porcelain. So what we can see here, we are using digital microscope to take a closer look. And this is a method. This is a kind of analytical method without taking sample from the object, which is very good for the museum objects. We can just take a look very closely, and with magnification around 50 times or 200 times, and you will see an entirely different look, which is very surprising. Other than you can expect. So that's is shown in the next slide, please. So in one of the cup, this is the example of one of the cup. Inside the cup has this flower decoration with the blue branch and the red flower petal, and on the top right corner we see this flower under magnification 50 times. You can see the bumpy blue branch already. This is kind of very different from the previous polychrome porcelain. And also in the red petal, you can see yellow dots, and the bottom right picture is magnified at 200 times, which help you to see it more clear. All these yellow dots, actually they are gold particles. And next slide. These are other image from other pieces. You can see all these pale red enamel or pink enamel are presenting in different way, which is a kind of indication of this experiment was carried out. Oh, can you see the PowerPoint? Yes. So these are the under magnification about 200 times. You probably can see this is larger size of gold particle. This is about micron size. And next one, please. And we also spot gold micro size particle in other pale red enamel items as well. So apart from this, you can also see there are very, very different texture in terms of texture. So next slide, please. So that we can conclude that without too much delay through experiment, the gold red glass was successfully created by the Qing Imperial workshop with their own recipe. And why do we say its own recipe? Because first of all, this micro-sized gold particle was not detected or was not found in a European recipe, because in European recipe they add tin as a stabilizer to balance a reaction to ensure the oxidized gold ion are reduced to metallic gold, and as a result of that, no micro-sized gold particle were observed in the European gold ruby glass. On the other hand, there was another much earlier study by MIT. They were using TEM, but TEM is the technique you have to take a sample and put it under electronic microscope to see much larger magnification, and also you can analyze the chemical composition. Anyway, in their paper, in their report, they mentioned there was no tin can be detected in a Chinese-made gold red glass or rose pink enamels, and they also mentioned they saw a presence of micro-sized gold particle in, I think, in one of their TEA image. So that's kind of matching what we found from here. All these pale red enamel porcelain housed in the National Paris Museum. And this was kind of exciting to see all these, so many gold particle observed in this Kangxi period pale red pink enamel porcelain. And however, you should note that this kind of micro-sized gold particle does not play the role of colorant in this red glass metric. It has to be the nano-size gold particle which reveal the red and the pink color in the recipe. So next slide. So the following, I'm going to introduce three groups. Other than the pale red enamel porcelain, we also conduct microscopical examination on another three groups to see whether there is the use of gold as a colorant to create red or pink enamel. So these six porcelain, you can see first of all, they are very typical overglazed red mark in four words, Kangxi Yuzhi. And under the digital microscope, we did spot gold particle in the mark. Next slide, please. Here, I hope you can see in the circle, I try to circle, there are more gold particle around the world, but definitely there is one inside the circle. This is around 50 times magnification, I believe. And next slide is in 200 times magnification. We show you much better. This is the double line of the overglaze mark, and you can see how, first of all, you can see the background is the transparent, the white porcelain. On the surface of the white porcelain is the transparent glaze, and on top of that, you can see they use the red glass powder to make this pale red or pink enamel, and you can see there are still some undissolved red glass. Apart from that, of course, you can see this bigger size, micro size of gold particle. I try to measure their size here, so it's about this Can you see the number? Yeah, that's the size of the gold particle. Next slide, please. This is the collaboration I did with Pauline, the blur curator, last April. And this is one of the blur objects. And on the bottom, we also find there are gold particles in the overglazed red mark. It is also the 4 letters, 4 words, Kangxi Yuzhi. I believe it's around the fourth word, 字 here. I think the next one will show you a bigger image. Yeah, here you see a big, larger size micro-sized gold particle was spot on this blur object. If you see the museum, you probably trying to find this one. It's kind of interesting and exciting when we found this one. And next slide, please. Apart from the red flower part, we can also find gold particle in the purple flower decoration. Why? Next slide, please. Because the color enamel, they are kind of prepared material. They are not raw material. They are kind of color glass powder. So you can see its actual color before firing already. And so unlike the traditional glaze material, when you like underglaze blue and white porcelain, the cobalt blue before firing actually is kind of blackish blue. It's not bright. It's not the bright blue you see after firing. But different from that kind of traditional glass material, the enamel color or the true color you see normally is what the color you see is the color you see after firing. And the purple, that's why the purple, let me see, the next slide please. Oh yeah, so from this one you probably can see the red glass, the mixture of red glass and the blue glass. And when they mix together, then what you see is the purple color. And here you can also see the gold particle released from the red glass matrix as well, while during the second firing, or we say baking the enamel. Next slide, please. These are some more examples about the purple enamel. And next one, please. And now we take a look. The second group is the Yongzheng, the porcelain with painting enamel from Yongzheng period. And they have overglazed blue mark in 4 words, Yongzheng, Lien. And the painting style or decorative style is pretty similar to the traditional Chinese painting, as I mentioned earlier. If you pull up next slide, you will see, yeah, like the Giuseppe, the Longshilling's painting is very traditional composition painting. You have the thing and you have the calligraphy, you have a seal, and you can see how Emperor Yongzheng trying to have that kind of composition showing on the porcelain, which is very new at that time. And next slide. Again, in this group, we can spot micro-sized gold particle in the red flower area. Next slide, please. Yeah, I didn't put a circle, but I truly hope you can spot the gold particle from your screen in the conference room. And next slide, please. This is another blur object. I believe it's also in the exhibition. If you haven't seen it, go and take a look. And this is a cup with a decoration inside the cup. And did some microscope examination on the bottom overglaze mark in kind of peach shape, and we found gold particle around the tip of the peach in different magnification. I think the bottom right one has a circle. Inside the circle is the gold particle we spot on. Next slide, please. The third group is a kind of particular group, not the standard piece, but we believe they are porcelain with painted enamel and made in Imperial workshop as well, even though it has underglaze burr mark rather over glaze burr mark. And by looking at the painting style, the art historian believes so, and by looking at microscope, and we defined, next slide please, we defined the golden particle in the red flower decoration as well. So this third group, maybe not convincing, but we believe it's very likely to be another subgroup of Imperial porcelain made in Imperial workshop in Beijing. Next slide, please. So apart from the innovative rose pink enamel, there is something new in terms of technique, enamel techniques as well. It's the binding media, because traditionally when Chinese potter making Chinese polychrome porcelain, the binding media traditionally be water, either water or glue. But if you compare with the archival material, you can kind of notice emperor and the imperial artisan, they kind of notice oil can be one of the binding media to use when they making painting enamels, and probably we could say this is another Western influence from the oil painting and the enameling. So next slide, please. So now we come to the second part, Yangcai. Yangcai are the porcelain with painted enamel made in Jingdezhen Imperial kiln. So while the experiment of painting enamel was in full swing in the Imperial workshop in Beijing, what happened in Jingdezhen? Based on the historical documents, the Imperial kiln in Jingdezhen was only intermittent running, sometimes not. And in the same town, same village in Jingdezhen, apart from Imperial kiln, there are some commercial kiln. What they are facing is they have to keep their business going on during the difficult time of transition from the Han Chinese rule to Manchu rule in Kangxi period. So let's take a look at the historical documents saying about Imperial kiln. Next slide, please. In this document, we can see two critical years. One is 6080, another is 6088. From 60 in 6080, in the year of 6080, some central official was sent to Jingdezhen to run the business of Imperial kiln, but it stopped in the year of 1688. Next slide, please. This is the document called 汇典事例. It's a compilation of laws and regulations of Qing dynasty. So from this document, we can see the Jingdezhen Imperial kiln probably just run between 1680 to 1688. And after that time, there were no central official coming from Peking to supervise the operation of porcelain making business in Jingdezhen. Until 1726, that's the Emperor Yongzheng period. Finally, he started sending people to supervise the operation of Imperial kiln in Jingdezhen. Next slide, please. In 1726, Lien Xiyao was the person who assigned as a head supervisor for Jingdezhen Imperial kiln. And also in the document, 国际党, we can see one of the notes asking, Emperor Yongzheng was asking to have the mark in 6 words instead of 4 words. So he wants to be the porcelain made Imperial kiln has 6 word mark, 大清 Yongzheng 年制. And official name was chosen for a good reason, because before being a headmaster, head supervisor for Jingdezhen, he was the governor of Candong, and during that period of time, he was sending and chosen or recruiting enamelers to Peking, to Imperial workshop. Next slide, please. So it's around like a 1726, 1727. There are some people from Central Palace to the Jingdezhen to help with the work. And also, they probably was mentioning in the 1727, the official budget was granted for making porcelain. So now you have the people to supervise, you have the budget to make porcelain based on the archival materials. Next slide, please. So this was Officer Lien Xiyao's report to Emperor, saying the year before he arrived, another officer, Zhao Yun, was there to check out the environment and the climate, and said the weather was not good enough and it's too wet, so it take time to get the anglais porcelain body to dry, and Emperor Yongzheng was trying to say, okay, do not rush, trying to make things good, not to rush the time. Next slide, please. And after that, the famous, the well-known headmaster supervisor in Jingdezhen was Tang Yin. Tang Yin was there from 1727, and he became the headmaster in 1737 and retired in 1756. He was in Jingdezhen almost 30 years, and he made a great contribution about porcelain making in the Imperial kiln in Jingdezhen. So that's kind of summary of the archival material about the Jingdezhen Imperial kiln. Next slide. And for the commercial kiln part, we can see from the later of Yin Hongxu. Yin Hongxu is French missionary or Jesuit father, François Xavier. He has 2 letters. One is in 1712, the other one is 1722, and those 2 letters has include his observation how the operation of commercial kiln was done in Jingdezhen, and one of the paragraph mentioned the rate, how the rate was made. So from his description, we can understand, or we can figure out the iron rate was used in Jingdezhen. Next slide. And the second letter he mentioned, this iron rate powder was mixed with white lead, and using like water or glue as a media to do the painting, to do the decoration on the porcelain. Next slide, please. So again, for the Yangcai, the same methodology as we studied the Falangcai. Yangcai, after the archival studies, we are using the microscope and the SRF to look at more closely, and also trying to figure out what's the difference in terms of chemical composition if possible. So next slide, please. So on the left-hand side, if you remember, that's what we see in the beginning of this presentation is the Falangcai porcelain. On the right-hand side is Yangcai. Next slide, please. And these are the Yangcai from Yongzheng period. They both have the underglaze blue mark, but kind of different quality or texture of the color decoration on porcelain. Next slide, please. So if you compare the Yangcai between Kangxi period and Yongzheng period, you can see the improving of the color quality from very transparent to less transparent. And the blue and purple are much more distinguishable. Next slide, please. So you can see the purple, traditional purple color is very transparent. And with some improvement, the blue is more glassy look, a little bit more bumpy look. It's more towards the enamel texture. And next slide, please. And also, if you look at the red is very different from what we see in the Falangcai. It's not glassy at all. It's very flat, and the tone of the red is very different as well. And next slide, please. And if you compare these two Yongzheng period Yangcai, as I probably mentioned on the previous slide as well, the texture of the glass is enhanced. So we can see the Jingdezhen porter or artisan are trying to run some experiment and trying to improve the polychrome and trying to imitate the sample they received from Imperial workshop from Peking. So the next slide shows you that's see more comparative between the Yangcai and the Falangcai. On the left hand side, no, sorry, this was the. Can we go back to the previous slide? If possible? No? Okay, let's stay this one then. So this one is it's not comparing Falangcai and Yangcai, it's just looking at the Yangcai around two different Yangcai pieces, but both from Yongzheng period. You can see the very flat iron red color is transforming into more glassy look. So they are adding something to make it more glassy. And next slide, please. And next slide, we can also see, apart from the glassy red, we can also see those color was not on white glass, not on the transparent glass. It's on the glazed porcelain body. And the white part, some of the red flower has the white glaze or white color underneath the red. So it's very different techniques and skills if you compare to the Falangcai made in Imperial workshop. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the Jingdezhen Imperial Kiln, the porter working in Jingdezhen Imperial Kiln, they're trying to make some improvement about the red color. Maybe not as perfect as those Falangcai pieces made in Imperial workshop in Peking, but they are trying to make it more glossy look. And we can tell that also from the SRF analysis by telling what kind of chemical elements they were using. First of all, iron. Here, Fe means iron. Tell us the rate is iron rate, not gold rate, whatever. It's iron rate, but the reason they are making it more glassy look is by adding lead, more lead into the glass matrix. So it becomes more like a lead glass matrix and adding red into more glassy look. So they are trying to do something and making improvement. That's what we can tell from microscope analysis and the chemical analysis through SRF. And next slide, please. So this slide show you the comparison between Falangcai and the Yangcai. On the left-hand side is Yangcai. You can see the gold particle in the middle of the purple flower decoration, and compared to the right-hand side is the Yangcai. Very different type of purple. One is transparent, it's more like a watercolor style. The other one is more thick in a way. It's more like an oil painting style. And next one, please. So we can see the Yangcai porcelain made in Jingdezhen, Imperial Qing, are using iron rate, but we can also see they are making improvement on the blue enamel. And the reason they have they were able to do it because they are using blue frit, and which this blue frit is kind of prepared blue enamel material. It's not raw material. It's kind of glass powder with some impurity. So they need to be prepared again. But they are not raw material already. They are kind of rough, glassy material, glassy powder. On the top right corner is a typical Falangcai. You can see it's very different from the red iron red showing in the Yangcai porcelain. So next I want to show you Ying Hongxun mentioned in his letter about Jingdezhen commercial kiln using the blue frit. So there were some documents saying they learned how to use the blue frit, probably from metal smiths. So next one. And here come to the end of this presentation. Thank you for your patience. And I just want to show you and give you kind of memory about the central focus about this presentation is we discover the innovative rose pink enamel in terms of Chinese own recipe because they have a micro-sized gold particle, which is very standing out. And I hope so far not too much information or not too much image to get you confused. And thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meg, for this wonderful overview of Kangxi and Yongzheng era enamel porcelain. Do I have to do something with that? No, it's a fine. Okay. Now we still have few minutes to open the floor for questions. We have two audience, I mean online and some people here, so maybe I can take first question from here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 So So there is a question about the difference between the trade porcelain and the imperial porcelain, and especially on the chart you show at the very beginning of the presentation. Can you maybe show the slide again? I think it was something like the third one, or yeah, the one with the different boxes. No? No. Yeah, the question is about the what would be the difference between Imperial's one and the trade porcelain.
Okay, so for most of our historian, they can tell by just take a look at it. So obviously the quality and the style is different. And one of the small point I mentioned in my PowerPoint, let me see, I can't remember is which one. So look at the mark. Usually the trade porcelain will not have overglaze mark. I think that's for one thing. If they are coming from commercial kiln, they are trade porcelain, they usually have underglaze mark, underglaze border mark, either, I don't know, 4 words or 6 words. And for those porcelain has overglaze mark, it's very rare because, you know, for those imperial porcelain that bear the overglaze bear with overglaze mark, some of them actually are quite very high quality Yongzheng white porcelain made in Ming Dynasty and was already kept in the imperial storage, and that's why Emperor Kangxi was using that as the base, as a you know, using them as the base, and ask the imperial artisan to do the overglaze on top of that. So the white porcelain itself may not be made in the Kangxi period. Actually, it was made much earlier in the Ming Yongde period. That's for one thing. So I think either overglaze or underglaze mark might give you some hint, but I would say probably not 100%. You know, nowadays people can do the imitation quite professionally. So you have to make sure you know all these, especially collecting history contents in a way when you look at the object. But if you take a look at the actual object, I think, yeah, probably you could say the imperial porcelain and the trade porcelain. One of the major difference is the mark overglaze and underglaze, and of course the style and the quality of the decoration will be very different as well. And secondly, again, through the microscope examination and the chemical and analysis can tell you more about it. That's what I'm trying to say in my presentation as well. So particularly, I'm not sure about the Qianlong period, because by the time reached the Qianlong period, every techniques in terms of painting enamels or making polychrome porcelain was very matured already, either in a commercial kiln or imperial kiln in Jingdezhen. So it's very difficult to say whether there's a use of the gold particle to say it's a trade porcelain or imperial trade. But if you focus on the early, like Kangxi period porcelain, you probably can tell the difference by whether they are gold red glass was used or not. And also, mostly at that period of time, the Jingdezhen porcelain, the red part, are chemically identified or analyzed. We know it's iron red, it's not gold red. So but these are not straightforward. The way you can really say this imperial porcelain or trade porcelain. I think you have to combine all the elements together to conclude your final thought. Where is the place of the manufacture of these certain objects? I hope I answer some of your question or give you some kind of idea how to approach your question to be answered.
Thank you very much. I think yes. Even if it's a big question and it's very hard to answer in this short period of time. But I know there are many people online, so don't hesitate to ask any question on the chat box that you have near from the screen. Because even if this event is online, we are still in a museum and we have to close it soon. So I will only take one or two questions if someone has to. Okay, so I think we should conclude, and thank you everyone for the first online lecture we had at the Bohr Foundation, and thank you for your patience with our technical issues. I'm very glad that we had this opportunity to hear you, Meg, and thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Have a good night.
Thank you. I do apologize the technical issue. And good night.
Thank you.